all CEOs, me included, we don't actually know what we're doing.
They're all sharks, so all you got to do, though, is know shark behavior.
I don't think we've ever talked about this before.
We can capture all of the wallet share.
First place you start is with the product.
That's just the first note.
This is the Capital Stack. Hey everybody, this is David Paul, the host of the Capital Stack podcast, where I talk to founders, operators, and investors about all things value creation in startups. Today I am talking to Pete Morgan, the CISO, Chief Security Officer,
correct,
and co-founder of Phylum, which is a cybersecurity company based out of San Diego, has raised 15 million?
Just under 20.
Just under
total.
$20 million.
Yeah.
And we're going to talk about cybersecurity. I don't really know what it is.
That's the trick. I think most people aren't really. There's a billion definitions, so that's kind of where all the startups live, right?
Yeah, we're gonna bust it open. We're gonna kind of like do a high level market map, and I want to know about your story. I think like you're a spy or something too. You've been put to the test. Love to hear that story as well.
Sure.
And so just give me a little bit of background.
Sure. I've been a security researcher since I was a kid. That was the only job I've really had. I got started learning how to program and then hack computers when I was like really young. Kind of got bit by that bug, and it all started kind of cheating with video games against my friends. So that was awesome. And then it turned into a job shortly thereafter.
You're kind of beefy guy too. So like, how do you come being like a nerd, you know, and like, I know you clearly work out. So
that was the duality, right?
Got a great body.
I played sport. Wonderful. Yeah. I played sports growing up and kind of definitely more of like an ADD type personality. So, you know, very into certain things. And it was computers and sports at the time, and then it turned into martial arts, and that turned into lifting weights, and then now it's just kind of a function to offset sitting in front of a computer for 20 hours a day.
It's a necessity more as like a passion.
Yeah, exactly.
Okay, so you started hacking video games, you got the bug.
Yeah, I went to school for computer science, but along the way I came across some opportunities to do some work and learn more of the craft, and then it turned into a job where people would hire you. You know, initially my first title was penetration tester, which is a common term now.
Yeah, that's what they called me in college.
I did try that in a bar one time. It did not go over.
No, it didn't.
Yeah, just as you'd expect.
I was the anti-penetration tester. I was like the penetration repellent.
It just never happened.
Never happened. No, it wasn't in my cards.
So yeah, did a lot of that work, and that turned into some opportunities to work with some of these really amazing security research consultancies, where I got to learn from just an all-star cast of people. I never deserved those opportunities, but I ramped so much from learning from those people. And that ended up, I worked at a place called Modosano Security way back in the day, and like they got sold to a large consultancy called NCC. Then I went to Accuvant, which turned into Optiv, and I ran their R&D team for a little while. Started my own boutique consultancy, just kind of doing my own. And then we did a startup focused on building products for the intelligence community for the government. So offensive tools for them to basically hack our enemies. And then we started Phylum. So super high level overview. Yeah.
So when we talk about penetration testing, we're talking about aggressively and intentionally trying to hack essentially your own, like
precisely
your own programming, right? You're hired to find weaknesses
before the attackers do, ideally.
Yeah. Facebook kind of started that, right?
They have a very strong security team.
I think I remember like them like being one of the first like enterprises that started to like have their own internal pen testing.
Yeah, I mean, banks have been doing it since the 90s.
Really? Okay.
Yeah, the finance group kind of makes sense, right? Like they understand risk probably better than most. And so I'd say they were probably at the forefront. I wouldn't say that's currently the case, but now it's pretty widespread industry. But Yeah, I mean, a pen tester got hired to ostensibly be the attacker and find a way in. And that can be, there's projects I had where they would just sit you down at a desk and you had to figure out how to break into the network and you're trying to get to a certain thing or just try to find any way in. I've gotten to break into offices to then compromise a computer or steal it. That one's kind of called physical penetration testing. So picking locks and defeating cameras and that kind of thing.
So that's like a legitimate spy shit. Like you were saying, okay, I want somebody paid your consultancy to say, how am I going to get this hard drive, right? I'm thinking like James Bond. I'm thinking like, you're going in, you're taking, or you're putting a USB in something, right? Something physically that you have to do.
And you're spot on because you're already thinking in the direction of what is the asset that you're protecting. And oftentimes when you do an engagement like that, you'll have some sort of flag. So what is the object? What is the thing you're trying to get access to or take control of? And that's kind of the threshold of, you'll have several of them typically, but then you structure them such that like, level 1, you get to this, level 2, you get to this, level 3. And yeah, it's not uncommon.
Yeah. So if we were to take a look at like buckets of hackers, what I just don't understand, and I'm hoping that you could illuminate me, is like, what is the intent, right? I mean, like, what are they getting access to? I mean, like, what is the persona, I guess, behind these people?
So I think you mean like criminal hackers, right?
Sure. Yeah.
Yeah. Someone who's actually like causing damage.
Yeah. Not the pen testing, but like, the actual people causing damage.
Finding ways to make money off of it. Right. So there was this thing, if you remember back when like credit cards were like stolen and fraud, and like these cards were sold online and you could buy like batches of credit cards and then you'd use someone else's credit card until it got caught. And it was always the object was to get money somehow. And that evolved a lot over the years. And now you hear about ransomware in the news pretty frequently. All ransomware is an evolution of the understanding by the attackers how to turn a computer compromise into money. So hospital is an easy example. If a hacker breaks into a hospital and they like change their passwords and stuff, like it's annoying, but they're not going to pay. You're not going to gain money anyway. Right. Like, are you going to try to steal cash from the hospital? Like now you're actually talking about testing a bank. It's not like compromising a hospital network won't give you anything to do that.
Well, that's what I'm wondering is like, like the money's behind another layer of security, which is a bank, right? Or some kind of financial institution. So I'm saying like, if I'm an enterprise and you're getting into my database or my schema or whatever. This is where
ransomware is so interesting is they figured out, okay, we write this malware to like,
malware
is a bad program that an attacker installs on a computer, typically surreptitiously, so no one else knows it's there. And they can use that as a way to get into the system as a backdoor, or it can just do things on their behalf. Remember like pop-ups on your computer from back in the day, like a long time ago? Yeah. That's I wouldn't call it malware because it's not really doing anything overtly bad, but it's the same concept. It's a program you didn't intend to be on your computer. Someone else kind of put that on and it's causing something to happen. Ransomware is just a type of malware where it encrypts all your files and says, I'm only going to give them back to you if you pay me through Bitcoin or whatever, some cryptocurrency. And then I'll decrypt your shit and give it back to you. And it's caused a huge problem, billions of dollars a year. But all it really is, and this is something I keep stressing to other people in my community, is that it's just an evolution in understanding. We knew how to encrypt and decrypt files before. Writing malware isn't really that hard. Like, not everyone can do it, but it's not that hard. We had all the tools before. It was just putting them together in a way where an attacker can use a compromise of a computer system, a network, an organization of some kind, and find the things that are important to them, databases, access to customer records, their trading platform, whatever it is, encrypt it, hold it hostage until they pay them to get the key.
Okay. And then what's a typical ransom, right? I mean, if you were to take a look at it.
Yeah, that's changed a lot. Can tens of thousands to millions.
Holy shit. Okay.
Depending on the organization. I think I just saw something that in 2022, ransomware payouts were estimated at somewhere around like 750 million.
Wow.
That sounds really low to me.
Mm-hmm. That's reported, right?
That's reported, yeah.
Right.
And a lot of this happens through watching certain transactions on like Bitcoin, right?
Just somebody ransomwared me, they'd be like, okay, you need to send me X amount of Bitcoin. I'd be like, okay, so how do I get a Bitcoin? You know, like, they get me on that end too. I mean,
and if you need they put like a wizard on it. Like,
totally. I was like, you just gotta, can I get on the phone with you real quick? Just help me. I'll help you.
That's awesome.
You know?
Yeah. It's, but that has caused a lot of problems for organizations just because, you know.
Now, does cybersecurity insurance cover ransomware or no?
That is a very loaded question. I believe in certain cases they were, but they're not now. There are, and there may be some that do. I'm not I feel like that's a pretty loaded question. I wouldn't be an expert on. Mm-hmm. But the challenge for an insurance company to like insure against something like a ransomware attack is you have to think about, well, how would an attacker get in and put the ransomware in the computer? Well, there are thousands of ways.
Yeah, there's a liability somewhere.
How do I ensure that your employees don't click on this stupid phishing email?
Yeah, why is this my responsibility?
Right. So
is that where it's coming through? Is it coming through phishing?
I mean, it's coming through any way the attackers can get in. Yeah. Like, you know, some crappy website gets compromised. They dump all the passwords that the website had for all the user accounts, and they spray them at all the other online services in the world, and it lands on some company. Now, because that employee used the same password for their corporate account as some shitty website, now they have access in the corporate network. They get onto the employee workstation. Now the attackers got a foothold. That's just one of
like a zillion ways.
Of ways, yeah.
Right.
So it's really tough to theorize about
or argue against not paying it. Like, you know, like where does your education? And there's this whole industry based on like, you know, phishing education, right? And
right. Oh yeah. And
No Before was a big one.
Yeah, exactly. And but the idea of keeping humans perfect, like it's just kind of a crazy thing to even theorize. We're going to say, okay, I got 5,000 employees hypothetically, and I'm going to expect they all are perfect 24 hours a day. Like it's just never going to happen. Right.
Yeah, it's a weak point.
Yeah.
It's a choke point. So what's the kind of penalty for this? Like if you get arrested? I mean, how many times are these hackers like uncovered?
Question. So not all of them, but there's a large contingent of the cybercrime we see in ransomware coming out of Russia. So how do we go arrest someone who lives in Russia? Mm-hmm. The FBI doesn't have any jurisdiction there. Mm-hmm. Russia doesn't mind if their citizens.
What do they give a shit? Is it citizens, or are they like, you know, nod, wink, wink? Are we talking about the Führer's, you know, people?
I think it's, from my understanding, it's more like, oh, you want to hack the United States, you know,
let me help you. Here's your tools.
Have at it. Yeah. Like, do you need, can we get you guys anything? Need some water?
Right.
Red Bull? Like, but this is one of the dynamics of the world market that's really challenging is, you know, there are places in China where if you're really, really good coming up through school at software development programming, you have that aptitude, you get put into the group that does exploitation of American assets.
Yeah, I feel like China would be a lot more organized than Russia.
Yeah, I mean, I think we have a little bit of a negative view. Russia has a really strong capability.
Oh, I believe that.
They're scrappy.
I believe that, but I just think maybe the organization is probably bigger because they have to monitor their own people, and then and then while attacking other people, they got to make sure nobody's doing weird shit like within their own country, and you know,
it's but there, you know, in these cases, like if I get attacked by some Russian cybercrime person and I hack back. Mm-hmm. I'm violating United States law. It's a felony. I go to prison if you get caught. That doesn't happen in the other countries. So you get is this like asymmetric warfare of, not really warfare, but it kind of is, where their attackers have no consequences. We can't even fight back. So all we, effectively what we're doing is we're on a.
How would you fight? Are you fighting back against an individual?
I mean.
So what are they doing? Are they calling the FBI and saying, you know, I got hacked, you know? Like, I mean, like, what is that?
They could.
Yeah.
They could. The point is it's a violation. We're violating our own law, and there's nothing on the other side.
Right.
So ostensibly we have to we're in a third grade playground getting punched in the nose, and our idea is we really have to make our nose stronger. There's nothing else you can really do.
Yeah, doesn't sound.
It's tough on the government level too, because that's effectively, that happens. That exact description of organization in different countries is also true at the government level. We're not very, we could be a lot more offensive, but that's a little bit beyond my pay grade as far as who's making those choices. But our enemies are very offensive, and they're willing to take that risk.
Sure. So if an American hacker attacks an American institution and they get in trouble, what does that look like from a?
Oh yeah, jail, massive fines. I mean,
so it's a federal offense.
Oh yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. I mean, there's the Computer Fraud and Abuse Act. I'm sure there's a bunch more now that has popped up, but that's something where, and sometimes you run into this with, like, you're doing security research, you want to like figure out how something works. Sometimes you'll have a junior person on the team and they get excited and they walk into an area they're not supposed to be. And you're like, you don't have permission to go. That's like a website, someone else's website or web app. You don't have permission to go look at that thing. If you do that and they get mad, that's a felony. Like, we're not in, we're not on the other side of the world here. Right. So yeah, I mean, jail, like, some people get put really, they've had the book thrown at them. There's a couple people that were doing some malware development, and it was kind of educational. It didn't seem really nefarious, but they got made an example out of them and went to jail for 5-10 years. They're definitely trying to show that there's consequences to this, and it's not just kind of
right. So the government's leaning hard onto it.
Yeah, like,
at least internally.
Yeah, you don't want to. It's definitely not something you want to get caught doing.
Right. So if I was to say, okay, like, explain to me, like, I'm 4 years old, the market map of software companies and vendors that are addressing enterprise cybersecurity. And, like, what are the categories or the taxonomy or buckets that they fall in?
Oh man, that's pretty complex. So we can go pretty high level. So you have antivirus, which is now anti-malware, like endpoint security protection. You have these like super, super big companies now. CrowdStrike, SentinelOne. Back in the day, you had like Symantec, McAfee,
Norton.
Right. Symantec.
Didn't the Norton guy kill a bunch of people or something, like the CTO?
The McAfee, John McAfee, was a little nuts.
Yeah.
Or maybe a lot.
Yeah. Okay.
But yeah, that's a while ago. So you have kind of these endpoint security product companies that are huge.
Is that a commodity at this point?
It's just a known line item in every budget for every CISO.
Got it.
You have to have endpoint protection. If you don't, you're like in violation of a bunch of stuff.
Okay.
And they kind of work, and they sometimes kind of don't. And like
CrowdStrike seems to be doing very well.
CrowdStrike's doing very well.
Yeah, they're like more on the SMB focus, right?
They're everywhere.
Yeah.
Yeah. They're plugged in everywhere. Then you have kind of a bunch of different tools depending on what the business is. If you're a software development company, there's large organizations like Veracode and Checkmarks and that look at like the software you're writing. That is kind of more closely related to what we do with Phylum. But large category of like, if you produce software, then huge categories around how you defend your network. So like a firewall, right? There's been, I don't know, hundreds of companies across the years, but like Cisco is a huge company. They were selling telco gear and then security firewalls and then a whole bunch of things around that. Places like Palo Alto, same thing, kind of born out of that firewall thing, but built to be defensive protection around assets, be it a network or an application or.
So that would be like the point, like another circle in for protection. It goes endpoint, virus, antivirus, malware, virus, and then we're talking firewalls.
Yeah, that's more like the network boundary, but this is still, it's a lot easier to think about if we kind of rewound the clock like 5+ years, because the whole work from home thing now has really changed the dynamics of everything. Like, what does a firewall do when all your employees, work from home? And I'm sure there's just monster swaths of this I'm missing. There's just
well, there's like workflow management within like CISO. I've seen a lot of those, like swim lane. You know swim lane?
I do know swim lane.
Yeah. So I had a chance to get in swim lane, single digit valuations while they were here.
I'm actually going to meet their CISO tomorrow.
Awesome.
Yeah.
The CEO Cody is amazing.
Yeah. That's actually how we got first introduced to swim lane. Cody's really cool. That's small world.
It is a small world. I remember he came to our office and we're like, well, I don't know. It's a big miss. It's a big miss for us.
Oh man.
Yeah.
Yeah. They're doing great.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. They were ripping. There was another company in town here that didn't do great called Cybersecurity. That was kind of a competitor.
Oh, interesting.
Yeah.
Okay.
But they were kind of like gunning and looking for money at the same time. So it's kind of
interesting.
Where you wanted to look, Yeah.
Workflow automation. There's like
there's workflow, like processing, and then there's the workforce education that I see. We saw like Nobi. There's actually a company in town here that just got funded. Right Hand. They just got I think a $5 million round today.
Oh wow.
Yeah. I think kind of like the next generation of Nobi 4.
Interesting.
Right. Because they were public and I think they went private and I think they're just turning like a motherfucker now. I mean, like they had huge contracts and I was like, I don't know if this is worth that much. These ACVs.
I mean, it's going to be something that like every company, it kind of like water, like they're always going to need something to fill that gap. And you're never done, right? Like there's no off button on that need. Just because everything's getting more complex day by day. So training is going to be crucial to any group. That's a great spot to be.
Mm-hmm. So there's kind of like the manual or the process automation. There's like the response. I mean, what else are we missing?
I mean, so if you think about defending software, this is good.
What's your stack look like? What's your internal cybersecurity stack look like? I mean, how many pieces of software do you have? Nobody's hacking me, motherfucker. You're going to go back at them with
I'm never going to say that out loud. Yeah. Because someone else would be like, I'm going to spend the weekend just making this guy wrong.
Yeah.
Right? It's never fun to be a target. So our product is built like extremely purpose built. So we, build on top of a bunch of existing technology, of course, Kubernetes and leverage GitHub to its complete extent that we can. Mm-hmm. But everything is extremely purpose built. So our attack surface, the size of our code base is fractional compared to like most organizations, I think, deal with.
Kubernetes, isn't that like the open source Amazon?
So it's a orchestration framework for taking kind of building software in a way where it can be self-scaling, let's say. So if I have, our stack probably has, 50, 80 applications, microservices. Mm-hmm. Each of them lives in this little Docker container, and Kubernetes orchestrates how all of those things kind of interoperate and also exist as code. So if we had to, let's say, the data center we're running, Amazon got hit by a missile or something, we could turn that on and bring it back up in entirety in like an hour. Mm-hmm. Whereas putting that together by hand would be months probably again. Mm-hmm. So Kubernetes is one of those orchestration frameworks that really makes things, complex services, more reliable and also reproducible.
Awesome.
Yeah.
So major trend not going anywhere is the tip of the spear ransomware?
I struggle with that. It's in the news a lot, so everyone kind of recognizes the term, and it's nothing more than an educated conclusion to an attack. So ransomware is the thing everyone should be afraid of, mm-hmm. because if their systems get compromised and the attacker figures out they have money, yes, ransomware will probably be the thing they have to deal with, but it's not the way attackers actually get in. Most commonly, they're getting in through things that weren't patched. None of this is rocket science. Like if you have, you're a server administrator and you're supposed to update your servers because there's security patches and you don't do that for a month, someone breaks in because
it's going to happen.
You didn't patch it. Like that's not, this isn't like there's nothing magic about that.
Mm-hmm.
We're using bad passwords, not having multi-factor authentication, not having some of the tooling to understand if you get compromised and what to do with that. Like this, a lot of these are defensible concepts. I will say it's pretty tough to get it all right all the time in a large organization that's moving fast.
Mm-hmm.
You have companies with 10,000 plus people. They're acquiring new companies and joining forces, and the attacker job isn't going away anytime soon.
So from a product perspective, I I understand the, from a very high level, like kind of some of the categories that we talked about over the last decade. I think, there has been a transit. I mean, you've heard of Stratechery guy, Ben Thompson, where he talks about the bundling and unbundling of software.
Oh, okay.
Right. And we've kind of moved from a ton of money going into the system where there's legacy, 1.0 platforms or SaaS 2.0 platforms of like, hey, we're going to offer, a little bit of everything, right? That's what the customer wants. And we're going to, kind of offer like the full cycle. And then throughout time, there's the best in class in the unbundling of the platforms. And we see companies that have really dove deep into segments and have, scaled and had lots of value. Where do you see that right now with enterprise and the tech stack, platform versus best in class?
Yeah, that's interesting.
I only ask the hard questions.
Yeah, that's good. No, it's a interesting way to think about it. I'm trying to make sure my view isn't too biased by what I see on a daily basis, but
I could see best in class staying in just because of how hard it is to pull these things out.
Yeah, I think a lot of that is changing. So, and I'm thinking a lot more more focused on I'm just going to say software companies as anyone who writes software. And that can be big banks that write their applications internally and manage that, and also the super big tech. As more and more of the market value is created by software companies, I think we're going to see a lot more opportunity for disruption there, because it's tougher to place yourself in a tech stack today and be sticky just because of the level of automation. Like I think about how software was written, call it 10 plus years ago, and now how everything lives on GitHub or something similar to that. There's so much automation. Tools that want to work on that type of code plug into these single points like GitHub, but it's to differentiate. You have to have a much, much, much better experience, because swapping out something else into GitHub is pretty easy for the end user.
Mm-hmm.
And so obviously the goal is on delivering value, having a better experience, making the experience and the results sticky, rather than hoping that the technological hurdle of removing and replacing is going to give me stickiness. Right.
Mm-hmm.
I think that's becoming more difficult to defend over time. With the exception of places like, maybe like a ServiceNow, where ostensibly they become an appendage of yours, right? Like
and I think it depends on the industry that they're going to. It's like if you're, ServiceNow very much services to, large enterprises, probably, late adopters, right, of technology,
right.
And they become mission critical. Whereas I think some of these tools are very interchangeable, they're very integration, dependent, and like they're known to be ease of use, and they're SaaS guys, so they're like, okay, well, let's they're startups, so they don't want to like rock the boat and have annual contracts, and things are lighter than they should be, but they put things in. Awesome. So have you ever hacked a pacemaker?
Yes. Yeah. That we did some. I spent some time doing a bunch of medical device work, and one of the things I did as a kind of research project was went and bought some implantable cardiac defibrillators and pacemakers, which are ostensibly the same thing, but they have a little bit of a different function.
Dude, that shit's so fun. I did that last weekend. I was just bored.
Just buy some stuff off eBay and take it apart.
Yeah, exactly.
But that's how security research is done, right? Like I literally bought some stuff on eBay and took it apart and figured out kind of how they talk to each other, and then figured out how you could, with a radio signal, get into one of these devices and change how it operates. And yeah, it's a problem.
And then what did they have to say about that?
So the company that I worked with I did that work on Medtronic's pacemakers and ICDs. They're kind of the biggest name in that space. And initially when I reported the work to them, it took a little while to convince them, let's say. And it ended up being a very, very positive relationship and working together to get it fixed. It took quite a while, as you'd imagine. Like when you release an update to something like that, it has to go through FDA approval, and there's a whole chain. You can't just convince a developer, they push a fix, and then everything's done.
Yeah, it's hardware. There's months, a supply chain.
Yeah. It's months and years to get that done. But they really showed an interest in working with the researcher community and responding to that. It took a little while to steer the ship a little bit differently, but ultimately the outcome was awesome. I'm still pretty close with a number of the people on their team, and see them at conferences. We work together periodically.
Cool.
Yeah.
That's a great way to win a deal.
Yeah.
Did you do it? Did you do it to somebody who actually had a pacemaker and it was pressed a button and they fell down, or
no?
Because that would have been very dramatic.
That would have been also very I can't imagine what the liability of myself up to for that. But
you want an omelet, you got to crack some eggs,
or you just have the little thing.
You can do it that
desk.
way.
Yeah,
you can do that.
Can you make it buzz? Can you make it play the Mario Brothers theme song? It's fun stuff.
Pete, thanks so much for coming down.
Thanks so much for having me.
Yep. Thank you everybody for tuning in. We have an episode every Tuesday. We drop on all the major platforms, YouTube, Spotify, and Apple. If you like it, please subscribe, tell a friend. We'll see you next week. Thanks. Bye-bye.
Thank you for tuning in to the Capital Stack Podcast. Make sure to share this with someone you know that can benefit from this content. Remember to support this show by rating, reviewing, and subscribing. David Paul is the founder and general partner at DWP Capital. All opinions expressed by David and podcast guests are solely their own opinions and do not reflect the opinion of DWP Capital. This podcast is for informational purposes only and should not be relied upon for decisions. David and guests may maintain positions in the securities discussed on this podcast.